All right, hello. My name is Steve Mistovich. Welcome to Return to the Father. This is a new YouTube channel that I am starting to delve into my faith as a Catholic and trying to learn more about my faith and deepen my faith as I move forward. So this is my first stream, and I'm going to start by reading an Imitation of Christ, and I'll just do a series here. And so this one, if you're not familiar, it's Imitation of Christ by Thomas A Kempis. I came across it as a recommendation, and was just really struck with the truths that are in it. They really struck home for me. And so I just had the idea to read through chapters and just do it as a live stream and go from there. So this book is a pretty short book, pretty easy to read. It's split into 4 books. Each book has various chapters, various amount of chapters. So I'll start by reading book 1 and the first 3 chapters today. Maybe give some thoughts of what really struck me when I read through them, and we'll continue on like that. So again, Imitation of Christ, book 1, Thoughts Helpful in the Life of the Soul. The first chapter, Imitating Christ and Despising all Vanities on Earth. He who follows me walks not in darkness, says the Lord. By these words of Christ, we are advised to imitate his life and habits. If we wish to truly be enlightened and free from all blindness of heart, let our chief effort, therefore, be to study the life of Jesus Christ. The teaching of Christ is more excellent than all the advice of the saints, and he who has his Spirit will find in it a hidden strength. Now, there are many who hear the gospel often, but care little for it because they have not the Spirit of Christ. Yet whoever wishes to understand fully the words of Christ must try to pattern his whole life on that of Christ. What good it do to speak learnedly about the Trinity if, lacking humility, you displease the Trinity? Indeed, it is not learning that makes a man holy and just, but a virtuous life makes him pleasing to God. I would rather feel contrition than know how to define it. For what would it profit us to know the whole Bible by heart and the principles of all the philosophers if we live without grace and the love of God? Vanity of vanities, and all is vanity, except to love God and serve him alone. This is the greatest wisdom, to seek the kingdom of heaven through contempt of the world. It is vanity, therefore, to seek and trust in riches that perish. It is vanity also to court honor and to be puffed up with pride. It is vanity to follow the lusts of the body and to desire things for which severe punishment later must come. It is vanity to wish for a long life and to care little about a well-spent life. It is vanity to be concerned with the present only and not to make provisions for things to come. It is vanity to love what passes quickly not to look ahead where eternal joys abides. Often recall the proverb, the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Try, moreover, to turn your heart from the love of things visible and bring yourself to things invisible. For they who follow their own evil passions stain their consciences and lose the grace of God. When I first read this, and some of these are hard truths that really, as one who has loved many things of this life, those aren't very easy words to hear, to give up all vanities, to hate the world, to have contempt for the world and the things that are in it. That's a foreign concept. I've obviously heard it before, growing up in the Catholic faith, but given the culture that we live in, we are taught and to seek and to value above everything, the things of this world. So not that I'm doing this in my life on a day-to-day. I'm trying to learn to do that as much as I can. But in my journey, I have seen like the love of knowledge, the love of learning, like it didn't make me virtuous. It didn't make me a good person. So just some things that stuck out to me when I read that first chapter. So I'll move on to the second chapter. It says, having a humble opinion of self, chapter 2. Every man naturally desires knowledge, but what good is knowledge without fear of God? Indeed, a humble rustic who serves God is better than a proud intellectual who neglects his soul to study the course of the stars. He who knows himself well becomes mean in his own eyes and is not happy when praised by men. If I knew all things in the world and had not charity, what would it profit me before God, who will judge me by my deeds? Shun too great a desire for knowledge, for in it there is much fretting and delusion. Intellectuals like to appear learned and to be called wise. Yet there are many things the knowledge of which does little or no good to the soul, and he who concerns himself about other things than those which lead to salvation is very unwise. Many words do not satisfy the soul, but a good life eases the mind, and a clean conscience inspires great trust in God. The more you know, and the better you understand, the more severely you will be judged, unless your life is also the more holy. Do not be proud, therefore, because of your learning or skill. Rather fear because of the talent given you. If you think you know many things and understand them well enough, realize at the same time that there is much you do not know. Hence, do not affect wisdom, but admit ignorance. Why prefer yourself to anyone else when many are more learned, more cultured than you? If you wish to learn and appreciate something worthwhile, then love to be unknown and considered as nothing. Truly to know and despise self is the best and most perfect counsel. To think of oneself as nothing, and always to think well and highly of others is the best and most perfect wisdom. Wherefore, if you see another sin openly, or commit a serious crime, do not consider yourself better, for you do not know how long you can remain good. All men are frail, but you must admit that none is more frail than yourself. So, wow. So, even when you see somebody commit a sin or a crime, it's calling you to not consider yourself better than they. And if that is not countercultural to what we are taught, to how we're used to living, uh, like that is not easy on the ears, at least for my ears. So, chapter 3, the doctrine of truth. Happy is he to whom truth manifests itself, not in signs and words that fade, but as it actually is. Our opinions, our senses often deceive us, and we discern very little. What good is much discussion of involved and obscure matters when our ignorance of them will not be held against us on Judgment Day? Neglect of things which are profitable and necessary, and undue concern with those which are irrelevant and harmful are great folly. We have eyes, and we do not see. What, therefore, have we to do with questions of philosophy? He to whom the eternal word speaks is free from theorizing. For from this word are all things, and of him all things speak. The beginning who also speaks to us. Without this word no man understands or judges aright. He to whom it becomes everything, who traces all things to it, and who sees all things in it, may ease his heart and remain at peace with God. O God, you who are the truth, make me one with you in love everlasting. I am often wearied by the many things I hear and read, but in you is all that I long for. Let the learned be still, let all creatures be silent before you. Do you alone speak to me? The more recollected a man is, and the more simple of heart he becomes, the easier he understands sublime things, for he perceives the light of knowledge from above. The pure, simple, and steadfast spirit is not distracted by many labors, for he does them all for the honor of God. And since he enjoys interior peace, he seeks no selfish end in anything. What indeed gives more trouble and affliction than uncontrolled desires of the heart? A good and devout man arranges in his mind the things he has to do, not according to the whims of evil inclination, but according to the dictates of right reason. Who is forced to struggle more than he who tries to master himself? This ought to be our purpose, then, to conquer ourselves, to become stronger each day, to advance in virtue. Every perfection in this life has some imperfection mixed with it. No learning of ours is without some darkness. Humble knowledge of self is a surer path to God than the ardent pursuit of learning. Not that learning is to be considered evil, or knowledge, which is good in itself, and so ordained by God, but a clean conscience and a virtuous life ought always to be preferred. Many often err and accomplish little or nothing because they try to become learned rather than to live well. If men used as much care in uprooting vices and in planting virtues as they do in discussing problems, there would not be so much evil and scandal in the world, or such laxity in religious organizations. On the day of judgment, surely, we shall not be asked what we have read, but what we have done, not how well we have spoken, but how well we have lived. Tell me, where now are all the masters and teachers whom you knew so well in life, and who were famous for their learning? Others have already taken their places, and I know not whether they ever think of their predecessors. During life they seemed to be something. Now they are seldom remembered. How quickly the glory of the world passes away. If only their lives had kept pace with their learning, then their study and reading would have been worthwhile. How many there are who will perish because of vain worldly knowledge and too little care for serving God. They became vain in their own conceits because they chose to be great rather than humble. He is truly great who has great charity. He is truly great who is little in his own eyes and makes nothing of the highest honor. He is truly wise, who looks upon all earthly things as folly, that he may gain Christ. He who does God's will and renounces his own is truly learned. So that is the first 3 chapters of The Imitation of Christ by Thomas A Kempis. If you listen to this, or if you've read the book, I'm sure that the words have hit you as hard as they have hit me. Still yet to wrap my head around. I will probably have to read this many, many more times to wrap my head and heart around what these words mean. So I will continue to read through this book. Tomorrow will be another stream, and I will read through the next 3 chapters or so, and we'll see where this thing goes.